Hello, everyone. This is the Awaken Us Love podcast, and Anayza is speaking. I am so grateful to have Lorena here. Hello, Lorena.
Hi, Anayza.
Lorena and I first met in university. We went to university together, and Lorena has recently taken my Into Soul Wisdom course and is currently still in a continuing cohort of Into Soul Wisdom. And we've had some sessions together. So I'm really grateful and happy to have her here just to speak about working with me, and but also just to speak about being on the spiritually conscious path and the path of awakening and what that means for her, because I feel the path is varied and diversified and full of, for some, with many guides and teachers. And so just to speak about her relationship with the spiritual path. Thank you so much for being with us, Lorena.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm curious to maybe open with what drew you to doing my Into Soul Wisdom course.
Sure. I don't have the short answer for that, I suppose, necessarily, but
Please, the long
I
answer is perfect.
great. Thanks. Well, I think I always have. I'm going to take it a look back to when we first met in university, and I remember a specific day actually where I felt like we connected, and I remember feeling almost something on a soul level, I guess, or what I feel, very deeply. And I remember, um, I think you were walking with our mutual friend Emily, and we were talking about something, and I was like, wow, like I really connect with her. And I think you had conveyed that to Emily as well. And I remember like soon after, I think that might have been our second year of university. And then as we progressed into um, primarily our last year, our fourth year, we were living in the same building, I think just a floor apart, and we would have like very deep conversations. I think both questioning ourselves, like what is the purpose of life, and why are we here. I think looking for questions, answers to questions that were much deeper than I think what maybe we were kind of being offered at the time, or maybe I think
Mm.
perhaps like, I don't want to say deeper than most, because I think everyone is on their own path, or I feel that everyone is on their own path. But I think that something that bonded us was our curiosity for something that much more that we couldn't tangibly necessarily put into words. And soon after we had graduated, I know that we had stayed in touch, given that we both lived in the New York metropolitan area, and we would meet up every once in a while. And I think, again, both of us, and I think more so you, and it was always sort of in the back of my mind, starting to work, like get jobs right after we had graduated from university. And again, I think those questions of like, what is the purpose to this life? And I think you'd always kind of bring me back to these questions. I feel like in some ways, I don't want to say superficially, but I feel like I was sort of embodying, or kind of, stereotypically what a young 20-year-old sort of living life right after college, and what that looks like. And then I recalled you telling me that you were you're going to take some time off to travel, starting in Malaysia, I believe. And then from there, in some ways, I don't think we were really that in touch while you were away, but I know when you would come back to New York, you'd let me know, or we'd get in touch again, and we'd see each other. And I think, again, just always in awe of you, of going deeper into the questions. And I think also in that time, because I had seen you evolve from college, I remember I could see your healing. I remember you really questioning, and can visibly remember seeing you upset, and then how you sort of took things in your own hands and were like, I'm going to do things in a different way, right? Which was not necessarily maybe the way that we imagine therapy or healing to be, but you took off, and I recall seeing you again once again in New York, and you had just mentioned to me about going to Malaysia, I think then ending up in India, um, and I think going through Nepal, and just different modalities of healing that you were going through, meeting different types of people. I think eventually you ended up in the UK, and again, just like taking note of all of these just different modalities or experiences that you were having. And then after that, I know that I had moved abroad. I was living in the Caribbean for some time. You were away as well, and I'm not quite sure. I can't remember how we reconnected, because I think by then it might have been. I mean, it still has been several years since we've seen each other, but I think it had been a few years since we had been in touch. But I recall, I think you had made your way onto Instagram, and I was following you. I think I had signed up for your emails, and again, just the depth of your writing, and like it just, again, I was like, I get this, like I understand this, and these are similar questions I have too. And then to see again your evolution, just your joy in this human experience. And finally, last year, you had by then been sharing about this course that you had developed into SoulWisdom. And right, again, by then, I think and just, I guess, to connect with this, with my own journey I remember at 22, visibly remember like this spiritual awakening of like, and maybe it sounds cliche, but this truly is what happened to me. I had, at 22, I remember waking up one morning, I had a memory from childhood that I had suppressed and I hadn't dealt with for a long time. And I remember it was so, really hard. Like it was really hard. I didn't understand this event that had happened to me. I didn't know what to make of it. It really shook me to my core, and I didn't know who to talk to about my situation with. I didn't feel like I could talk about it with my family. And then from there, I felt like the things that I was at one point interested in became tangible to me, and like things started making sense. And then from there, I I went through, I guess, maybe 2 bouts of depression, in some ways trying to solve it on my own, going to therapists that in some ways helped, but in some ways didn't. I really didn't feel like I was being seen in the way that I needed to be seen, and I didn't know exactly what to do. So I went through a series of things, of therapy, of working with my friend who's a medium, meditating, practicing yoga, so many things. And then eventually I ended up moving to the Caribbean for work, and I felt like my experience got deeper about myself as a human in this world. I would say the prejudices, the conditioning, I guess, most of all, from growing up in the United States. My my parents are immigrants from Latin America, so it was sort of moving to the Caribbean. I felt like I was stripped from a lot of things, a lot of this conditioning, and I felt like I was very naked in this place. And I went through so much. I went through a lot, not only moving to a new place and I think experiencing a culture different than my own in many other ways, but also just like survival and living with people who I felt in many ways were labeled as or judged in so many ways, and were beautiful. And I didn't understand, like, why are we judging other people, or why are we holding people to a certain standard, like, sort of like, I guess my thing was, what is life? I was kind of going through this existential crisis, I think, for a long time, and I was really questioning a lot of things. And that was pretty hard for me. And again, like, doing it all on my own, and I really felt like the people that were supposed to unconditionally love me weren't necessarily there. And I think that also rocked me to my core. And then when I returned again, it was in some ways a very solitary path because I had made some decisions that people were not necessarily in agreement with. I felt, again, very on my own. I also felt like I was on this spiritual journey that I mean, still kind of feel that I couldn't find or didn't find a lot of people that I could talk these things with. Or if I did, right, I think it's oftentimes hard for people to emblemise, for us to emblemise this, for us to really live and walk this talk, like really live it. And then yeah, so it was just sort of like, what do I do with all of this? So again, I kind of went back to the frenzy of like speaking to healers and astrologers and like, I guess always looking for answers externally. And so I remember reading like so many books about intuition, and I always felt I've been a very intuitive being, but I was like, well, but how? Like, how do you know? Again, right, your intuition. I always felt like my gut was really strong at times, but it was strong at certain times. And then when I was going through really intense decision making, like it wasn't there enough. And I was like, how do I align my mind, my body, my soul with all of this? I mean, I feel like even talking to you, you can experience a little bit of the frenzy going on during that time. And so just so many questions, so many questions. So again, when I had and that was kind of a background about what I felt when I saw your post about into soul wisdom, right, which is really working with your intuition. And I was like, okay, like this is something that I'm really interested in. And I had reached out to you, and again, you were very open to working with what I could, with what I could give, what I could provide, and in terms of a compensation to you. And for that, I'm very grateful. And we started working with that. And it was, in an interesting time, right, during this declared pandemic last year in March, right, given COVID-19, really hard time, obviously globally. I felt like symbolic in so many ways of a crisis, like a worldwide crisis, not only right economically, and I felt like externally or tangibly, but also people were going through, kind of having to come inwards to themselves, right? Because we were in lockdown and we had to remain home. And what does this mean to spend all this time on my own? And I felt like in the beginning, I was like, this is, this should be fine because I'm an introvert and I am a very inquisitive person about myself. But because life is so busy, right? That's maybe half an hour of your time, maybe 1 hour of your time, but to kind of spend a lot of hours was something else. And so to have this course came, of course, synchronistically, and it was at perfect timing. And so so we did, I think it was 3 months. I remember it was March, April, and May, and we first started with meditation, and then from there I remember we did a lot of visualization, and then I forget the last piece that we did, but I felt a lot of this was working towards different facets of ourselves, and part of this was learning to trust yourself. And I remember taking that away from the first part of Into Soul Wisdom was everything that comes from me is valid, and it's all a part of my journey. Every single part is a part of my journey. And so so I'm still working with that, and trusting that, and loving those aspects of myself. So and again, I can go into that as we speak further, but I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I really feel like you took us into a story, and it was really great to hear about how you recall our relationship in university and just how you've witnessed me on my journey and then reflecting about yourself. Like, thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah, and
And
sorry, I'm sorry to intertwine that. I apologize for interrupting you, Anayza, just because I was like, why did I say that? Because through my, and when I say that, right, as I think, right, I believe you're a pioneer in a lot of ways. And I believe when someone can kind of, in some ways, show you this is possible. And so when you put that post up, right, I think because, and I think it's different when there are a lot of people out there who are offering their services, right, offering their healing and their techniques, but I felt really blessed that I knew you because I did see that evolution and I did see that healing process, and to me it was, oh, it is possible. And also have gone through a lot of things, and then to work with somebody that I have fundamentally seen evolve, like tangibly evolve and tangibly heal. It just different, seeing you in terms of how you spoke was different, and how you it just felt so unconditional. Everything, like your presence was unconditional, your love was unconditional, your love is unconditional, I should say, your welcoming is unconditional. And so that to me was, this is the person that I feel the most resonant with and I do want to work with. And I feel that I have an additional blessing and that I also have a friendship with her. Sorry, and I just wanted to add that last piece.
thank you so much, Lorena. That's so, wow, it's really kind to hear. And I really do feel like really blessed to work with so many people that have known me for so long, because it really, because this is such intimate and vulnerable work. And it, I mean, I know, I mean, just this, it really is a testament to like, to what you just said. And I just so appreciate that. Like, thank you so much for witnessing me and for witnessing my journey. And there's like this thing, like, I know I'm real, you know, but there's this really beautiful experience when someone who has seen you through within the last decade like reflects that to you. There's like, it makes, because the growth and the healing, the evolution is tangible, but it's also very intangible, you know, there. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel it's so beautiful to be witnessed and seen in that change. And for so many people who just meet you in like a certain phase, it's, you know, it's great and it's remarkable. But I think a depth is added when you can see the, like, when you witness a transformation and the continued evolution, you know, the continued embodiment and remembrance. And well, I just really appreciate all your words. And yeah, it reminds me of myself, just that my, like, I was always so, I always had such a deep curiosity about life, and I still do, about like, what does it
Mm-hmm.
mean to be here? What does it mean to be alive? And not really getting the rites and rituals we have now um, that are some ways, in many ways, devoid of soul and spirit. Like, not, I
Mm-hmm.
never really understood them. Like, for like,
Mm-hmm.
since I was a child, it just never made sense to me, and I didn't get it. And growing up in New York City, I really personally wasn't exposed to other ways of being, and that's what really inspired me to go traveling, because I feel personally the call of my soul has been so strong from such a young age. And even though it was so scary to sort of live this alternative life, there was nothing else I could do but to respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was, you know, scary at times, and there's so much uncertainty and doubt. And I appreciate the reflection of being a pioneer or a visionary, because there are people who have come before me, there always are. But in the way I've lived my life, there aren't many people I can model. I haven't modeled anyone or seen someone who's done
Mm-hmm.
it to make me feel secure in the choices. I just decided that it's possible and made my own security, and took and made each step. If my feet was on the ground, then
Mm-hmm.
that's stability, and sort of living from that way. And yeah, so I just really appreciate the reflections and what you have to share about that. It means a lot to me. So just thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. And just to add to that, Anayza, too, um, we, I believe, share a similarity in that both of our parents, they migrated from Latin America to the US, and interestingly enough, also to the New York metropolitan area. So I think sometimes these spaces also at times feel that they're accessible for a certain type of people, or sometimes I felt too like I feel out of culture. I'm not Latin American enough at times, with these curiosities. I think especially because, there are certain, religions, right, that are so, they're deeply entrenched into society. And I know in my upbringing as well. And I was always, like you, questioning, there has to be more than this. Like, I do believe there was a value in the religious context in which I grew up, but it felt very, I guess, superficial in some ways, or too almost like checking boxes off, or like, if I do this, then this will lead to, this good thing, or if I do this bad thing, then I'm going to end up somewhere else, right? And I think it was always reckoning with, I'm human, right? I'm not perfect, and what you're asking me is to be perfect, and I'm not perfect. I am genuinely trying to do my best every single day, using the figure, right, not necessarily of I want to say, I don't know how to say this, but not necessarily just honoring the figure and going to church, for example, to kind of meet my weekly quota. But I really felt that um, the figure that I was, raised around was, which is Christ, which is Jesus Christ, is not necessarily to go to church once a week, right? But to really emblemise what is Christ, who was Christ, and what really did he come to teach us. And I really, and I feel like through these practices, I've been able to understand much more deeply for myself, because this is what resonates with me, and this in different, perhaps, practices, right? Or whatever resonates to you. But to me, what Jesus Christ emblemized to me, because I have gone through this journey and continue and will always continue to be on this journey, is really what love means, this unconditional love, this, right, this yeah, fundamentally love, right, in a society that I think tells us to live so much from the flesh, so much from what's tangible, right? But and I don't think that those values aren't always, necessarily aligned. And I have always questioned of, like, you're asking me to love my neighbor, right, as I love myself. And you if, I guess, just as to start with that as an example, yet there are many people that I know that go to this institution, and yet we're not accepting of all individuals, or we're not really questioning, right? Or even, practices such as Lent, right, of not just giving up chocolate. But I really feel like what we're being asked for is for an inward journey of ourselves, right, like to go deeply, almost, and actually mystically for me. And so I feel that I feel closer to what I believe is, right, the divine, with God, whatever people may call it, the universe, because of this journey. And I feel that I can live in closer alignment than, I think, necessarily just following dogma, which I hope that makes sense. And so to me too, of again, right, like, I'm like, well, Anayza is also, we're similar, we have some similarities too. And the fact that I think you also, pioneered that too, of our parents are very hardworking people. They migrated here, right, in a lot of ways, to give us opportunities that were not available to them in their home countries. And I think oftentimes we view that as economic opportunities. But I guess as I have also expanded my way of how I view spirituality and religion, I've also expanded my view in that my opportunities have also been from being able to explore my spiritual path in much more depth than maybe what may have or could have been available to me otherwise. I hope that makes sense. So again, thank you for that as well.
Wow, yeah, there's so much in what you just said. I'm gonna do my best to respond in kind because I feel like it's really like important. And so like when I said that there's not many people that I could model my path after, like I mean, the thing that was in mind is like there's not many young Black women who are like, you know, traveling on their own around the world and like hitchhiking and like staying in monasteries and meditating and doing these things. When we see the people who sort of forsake society and choose to go inward, you know, it's mostly people of European descent, like white and male. Like that's mostly, or female, but that's mostly the image you see. And that's like, wasn't, I feel my connection with something that's beyond my race, gender, and body, even though I wasn't aware of it. And even though that connection doesn't deny my race, gender, or body, but I feel like who I am and who we all are is both within and beyond the things that are material. And I feel from a young age, I must have like unconsciously just really felt that. And like I always, and I like, I just don't understand how people judge me on the way I look. Like it doesn't make sense because who I am is something that emanates from the way I look and through the way I look. And so I feel like it was a really unique, I mean, for many reasons, but for like another part because of my background, like my physical body, of the path I chose, and my capacity to choose that we don't have to be limited to the standards of society that are imposed on us, that we can actually choose the parameters of our own life and live that choosing. And it's one thing to say that, but to embody that is an experiment. Like that's how I experience it. Like it's an experiment of my body and my life. And like if I was to go to this place, how do people respond to me? If I choose these esoteric and mystical followings, like what does that mean? Because it feels so much a part of me. And the fact that it may not be like it might not be stereotypically associated with someone that looks like me doesn't really make sense to me, because from within my own being and body and perspective, I only know myself as myself. Like I don't really know myself as a product of like a system, if that makes sense. And then when I'm out in society, then I realize that, oh right, I am too a product of a system. But from within my own experience, I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying. It's just like my own curiosity and like how I interact with my being, I think is unique. And and I always felt like, if I mean, it's like that I'm allowed to live life the way I want to. And I just don't understand why I wouldn't, because of race or gender or age or any of these things, as long as of course it's in within like reason of my own, of love, like of my own evolution and expansion and curiosities and knowledge and knowing and of love, and connecting that to like the mystical and divine, and like really that which is eternal and ephemeral, and like really living on the courageous path of diving into that. I'm curious. Yeah, I mean, that's so, it's so at the heart of like what I share and what I do in Into Soul Wisdom. It's funny because in some ways the parameter and the course and all the things are, they're tools and they're real. Like we have real pains and traumas and things that we've experienced that we look at and we go through, but what we're doing is rekindling that connection to source within us. Because when that connection is strong, we have an understanding of the traumas and the stories in a way that's different. I find it's such a experiential relationship versus one that I can put into words, because it's like a reformation of the mind and a way of being that allows us to be in deep trust and in deep love with our life and our experience. So I'm curious for you, Lorena, just to speak more about, you said like this journey supported your connection to like mysticism, and if you could speak about maybe specific things or maybe about Into Soul Wisdom in a way, like how was it for you to experience? I really loved what you said, learning that remembering really every part of us is valid, and this thing of learning to trust yourself. But if you want to share more specifically about how intersoulism supported that, or even any other practices or guides or.
Sure. That's also a very past question. Like I'd mentioned before, I grew up right in a Catholic household. I should say, I guess, kind of alluding to that before. And I have always felt a connection with something greater than myself. I always have, like you, Anayza, since I was a small child. I really have always felt that. Um, and yeah, and I think part of that again is right, is the dogma that I was saying of like there has to be more than this, right? There has to be more than these rules that tell me, you know, that essentially in some ways makes me a good person, and if I don't follow them, a not so good person. And so that was part of the journey, right? Of like, I want to understand more about this. And I also was questioning, you know, there are so many other religions in the world, and it cannot be that one is just right. And um, I felt as I got older, to me was in some ways just a different way of celebrating the divine. That is what resonated with me, and that's what I feel to be true. And I would start with a lot of books. Like I remember I have one book that actually puts um, I think it's Taoism, or I might be wrong about that, but it was the Bhagavad Gita, um, scriptures of the Bhagavad Gita, scriptures from the Bible. Um, it might be Taoism, I can't remember, but I know there's one more. But anyways, I remember reading that book, and a lot of the scripture from each of those books were very similar in the message that they were saying to write to their reader. Um, and so as I delved much deeper into that, and I felt I got to know, I guess I did more. I don't know if research is the right word, but I delved more into what it is to be Christ, right? Not necessarily the individual, but to Christ, right? Christ like. um I got deeper and deeper into that, and I eventually stumbled my way across this um priest who, for me, yeah, in the way that he presents himself as a mystic, and also presents many mystics, many of them women, um many of them people of color, like something that really felt more resonant with me of this is what this means to me, this universal love, right? That for me, right, what I call God is a manifestation, or manifest its being in people, in different types of people, right? In different, in um in just different, right? People, all sorts, shapes, sizes, color, um gender. That to me is God, right? It's the manifestation of that. And so um with Into Soul Wisdom, what I felt was, again, because I had spent so much time looking externally for my spiritual answers, I was like, I want to be able to go deep into myself, and in some ways my soul, right? The soul that people talk about, the soul that these mystics talk about, the soul where people are having conversations and dialogues with God around this dance. And so Into Soul Wisdom for me was coming into deep intimacy with myself, and it's an intimacy that I still am working and growing with and learning about. And I had kind of on and off been meditating for several years now, but I think that moment, I remember precisely, you had us do one meditation on meditating with our bodies. And that to me was a total game changer. Like to actually feel what my feet are telling me, my knees, um, my stomach, my just different parts of myself, to be able to get out of the mind and really feel what my body was telling me, the just different, the intelligence of our bodies, outside of our minds, because we live so much, right? We live in a society conditioned to purely act and think from the mind, and to be able to say, actually, and actually, you had asked us this, of asking ourselves questions and not seeing how our mind responds, but how our bodies respond. And so that was part of that. And then from there, visualization, right, of what came up. And what I found in working with yourself and two other incredible women, and we were apart, some of them were, we were like, and not even in the same country. We were in different countries, different time zones, and that together we were able to connect on this soul level, and we were able to see themes that were similar, like about ourselves, without meeting each other, without knowing who we were. Just honestly, four souls that are dedicated to this journey. And so that, to me, right, in yeah, in some ways, I guess, has helped me in terms of my soul, of, right, of the mysticism, of understanding that beyond what I think is available to us in some ways tangibly, but that we have this intelligence within ourselves. And so that this course has taught me that I am the compass. um I when I lead from here, when I align myself from here, all things follow suit. The right things, the right people, the experiences, regardless of, right, of however we label them, but that they're all part of my journey and evolution towards, right, myself, the self. So I'm not, again, sure if I answered your question, but yeah, just kind of, I guess, the connection of one thing towards the other, and where it has taken me, and where I presently find myself, and how Into Soul Wisdom has helped me deepen that, I guess, that quench that I've been needing to fulfill. So yeah.
Thanks so much for that. I really, yeah, those feel so poignant. In the core of Stoicism is to come into deeper intimacy and relationship with yourself. And that is a relationship, like all relationships, that are tended and that grow. And because there's so much to us and of us, like I feel energy is alive and it's sentient. So when we experience things from our childhood, things from other lifetimes, other planes, like they're present within us right now, like within our body, within our energy body. And for us to know that and to know how to perceive that, I feel, is to come into deeper intimacy and relationship with ourselves, and know more how to show up to and in the world. I feel there's so many people who, who share of God and of Christ consciousness, as you're saying. And I feel like I've read many books, like many books in Buddhism. That's like, it was really my interest. And I feel like I was like really interested in Muji. And I spent a lot of time listening to his sharings and self-inquiry, and Krishnamurti like completely changed my life. And why the mystic, like Krishnamurti, was the one that kind of, after listening to him, I sort of stopped listening to many external things, because to me, he was the most enlightened, awakened being I've ever read. And there's something about his transmission that seemed to cut through. And he said in the book, why are you listening to me? Like, why do you eat certain foods? Why do you do certain yogas? Why do you not have sex or have sex? Why are you listening to me? Listen to yourself. And I was like, if the most enlightened person I've ever read said to preference myself, like, over their teachings, something about that, like reading that sentence, completely changed my mind and my relationship with understanding external, internal voices, my relationship with authority. And while I feel like I did receive so much from these external voices, at that time, I actually did this like month-long detox where I stopped listening to anything external. I didn't listen to music or watch TV or read books. Of course, I would hear music if I was walking down the street or whatnot, but I really wanted to hear my inner voice. And I feel that experience is what really like supported a lot of my relationship with my intuition and with the work I do and with Into Soul Wisdom. And I guess I'm sharing that because it really is a balance and relationship of reading and listening to other people, because it can be so supportive, but also really sort of sitting in the cauldron of our own self and being in the uncertainty and letting that like come through and erupt and then follow what's next. And like my intention with Into Soul Wisdom is to create the parameters where we know how to sit in that cauldron and to sit through the discomfort of our own uncertainty and our own feelings of not enough and just like not feeling worthy, and to just be able to be with that long enough for the next thing to arise, because another thing will always arise. It might be a deeper feeling of those sensations, there might be something else, but I feel the greatest gift I've given to myself is to withstand the intensity of my own feelings and to know how to listen to them. And so that's like my that's my thing. That's my like mission, I guess, with Into Soul Wisdom. It's just to like have the tools of knowing how to listen to ourselves, and then to be in relationship with our own knowing, and then with the external world.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying that, yeah, I've been reflecting. You made me reflect, or invited me to reflect on the few months that I've actually just gone through, and just that. And actually, the mystic priest that he has a center called the Center for Action and Contemplation, and he actually has daily meditations, or things to sort of think about. And one of the things, as you were saying, reminded me of these words of these books, or right, kind of external, perhaps books, people, scriptures, teachings have a place, right? I think that when they bring us in some ways. And then I think at one point, right, part of this is that it's in some ways guiding you back home. And then and I think, as you get more intimate with yourself, or perhaps not thinking, feeling, I think when you are ready, right, to delve in deeper into yourself, right, where your school now becomes you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and the right, it's not, again, the mind. I'm really working with this, I guess, concept of I lead with my heart, and my mind helps me execute, right, or helps me kind of work through whatever decision came through from my heart, right? And I think a lot of people today say heart, right, kind of mix it with emotion. I think we need to work through our emotion to really get to the core, our heart, right? I guess that purity, that love. And so yeah, and I think part of that is, like you said, the detox of space. I went through 2020, at the end, ended up being extremely tumultuous to me, very, I guess, almost like, yeah, on fire. I felt like I was on fire at the end of it, in a way. Like, I felt I faced a death manifested through different things in different ways. And I was blessed, honestly, with the right people. I should say the right women, incredible women, women that are, women that are beyond my family sisterhood. I just want to put that there, who in so many ways took care of me, and blessed me both physically and I mean, and through different spaces, I needed the space to detox, to be by myself, to kind of arrive to the answers I have. And so something I've noticed now is that these tools, right, these external tools have served their purpose, and I feel like I have arrived home, like I'm arriving to my home. And something I'm noticing now, for example, is I'm recognizing my anxiety. I knew what when I was an anxious person, but now I'm really understanding that. I can see what it feels like in my body, and I can almost in some way separate and say, I see that anxiety, I feel it, and I can see that I'm running away from it, and I need to actually sit down with it. And in some ways, the anxiety is asking me, right, to sit down with it and explore it. And what does that mean? And I think part of being into soul wisdom and in these different circles is to be unafraid of what comes up from you, right? What comes up from our bodies. That actually, in some ways, I look at them as friends. They're my friends. They're my, kind of feelings that live within me that are asking me to address, to sit with them, right? And it's not just, we always, are looking to, I guess, get rid of the anxiety, get rid of this, but what if actually they were doors to go deeper within ourselves? And so something I'm actually really proud of, and I think to me is an emblem of my journey um, on this spiritual journey, is that when that starts happening, I can now manage it better in the way that I can sit down with myself. I will separate myself. I will take the tools that I need and sit with myself. And it's a game changer, to be quite honestly. And I feel like for me at this moment, I feel like each moment in your day, throughout your life, are invitations to go deeper within yourself, to align. I actually believe it is the only job that we have. Everything else, our actual jobs that, right, where that permit us to live, right, the relationships, whatever it may be, I feel like are add-ons from that first, right, from the base, from that relationship you have with yourself. And that is the most important relationship, because everything falls from there, falls into that. And so I'm learning to prioritize it. I can recognize when I've stepped away from it for a while. Um, and and I really do believe, and I feel like as you strengthen that, right, and my belief is that no matter what perturbs you, no matter what comes to you, um no matter what, right, no matter what, um when you feel that, you feel an enormous amount of enormous amount of wealth, an enormous amount of safety and security in yourself, because you have like that I'm going to come back to this place, and this place will lead me through um to obtain, to become whatever I need to be, or whatever I need to receive. And so ultimately that is, I guess if I were to summarize, right, is in some ways this birth kind of gathering, right, like going through different experiences. For me, then it was this awakening that was tumultuous, that was hard and awful, and really trying to grapple on my own, like, how do I do this, right? And then trusting, right, and seeing the people around me, like yourself, Anayza, right, and sometimes feeling like, but this isn't possible for me given my background or whatever, but it is possible, it has been possible. And then these other tools, right, books, people, teachers, that eventually, right, and I think in some ways have led me back to you, that have invited me in to continue, right, and this is it's not like okay, I did this course and now I'm all set. Like, no, this is constant, a constant nourishing of this relationship with yourself, with your soul, which to me is a manifestation again of the divine, right? And then to be able to meet and speak to other individuals who are on the same path and also see reflections to me of God is really beautiful. And again, to me, the most important thing is that I continue to nourish that, because that will lead me to receive to the places, to the people that are meant to be in my life, that are there to help me evolve, or perhaps me to help, assist in people's evolution, and go from there. So yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, you said so many beautiful things. Yeah, and I really appreciate them. you said something along the lines of everything in this life is supporting our own alignment, like to come deeper in our alignment. And that alignment is the manifestation of the divine and the connection with our soul and our heart and our being. And this, as long as life, as long as we live, I feel this journey of intersoul wisdom, if we choose it, it is not something we do, it is what we are. Like if you look at the words, when we go into our soul wisdom, it's not something that is done. It's something that it becomes a way of being who we are and a way of being in life. And always leaning into the knowing and the wisdom of our inner self, of our soul, of spirit, and letting that co-create our relationships and our livelihood and what we see, to really see through the eyes of our soul, to really see through the eyes of the divine. I feel as we started this call, and Lorena, you brought in these existential questions that we've had from young ages of what is the meaning of life, or there must be something more than this. I feel that we in so many ways have responded to that inquiry of our younger selves, and we live the response. Like our life is it's a constant response to that inquiry of what is the meaning of life. But it's as if, for me, and you can say how it feels for you, but it feels as if the gap has been closed. And I know each moment, each breath, and each experience I do from like a true sense of eternality, like the soul heart is, it is living more, it is something more than this. Like I feel like my life has answered that call and continues to as I live and grow and expand and emerge and emerge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Anayza. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's the into soul wisdom. I feel like it's a course in some ways of opening the door to you, to this this relationship with yourself, that you're just, in some ways it's just the beginning. And absolutely, yeah, I didn't think about it like that, but I have been recently thinking of myself, or I have an image of myself as a small child, and I even have a picture of myself as a 5-year-old in my wallet to look at, and I remind myself in some ways that I am who I've always been looking to
Mm.
be, to remind her of that. And I also feel that when I'm able to do that, I'm able to see people from that place, to and to live from grace and compassion, empathy. Um, mhm. So, and also, right, setting right those boundaries too, of um, setting those boundaries and being there for ourselves, right? And I think that is part of the practice of love, is we're living in relation with ourselves and living in relation with others.
Yeah. And knowing, it's like the boundaries, I feel so much, just knowing how to choose, like knowing how to
Mm.
choose ourselves in
Mm-hmm.
every moment, and
Mm-hmm.
to trust that choice, like that it is
Mm-hmm.
in the highest love for ourselves and another.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the words are so similar. Like this is something that I really found amazing after the four person stoicism. Like everyone is saying the words I'm saying, but they're saying it from themselves. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
saying it from their
Mm-hmm.
experience. They're saying it from their, like this experiential thing. And so as I love having these conversations, and I'm like, wow, they're, I mean, unless I can invent new words, I mean, these are the words, like to open the door of you, to learn about yourself, to become intimate with yourself. It feels in some ways so, I don't know, like top level, or like I'm like, oh, what are the more precise words? But those are the words. The precision is our experience of it, is our
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
individuated knowing, because that is profound and deep and like
Mm-hmm.
colorful and varied and diverse. But to put it into language is
Mm-hmm.
it's like kind of like putting a pin into water. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it can't quite grasp it, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean the pin isn't in the water, but it's constantly in movement. it's constantly in movement. So I guess I say that to whoever's listening to this: trust the resonance you feel in your body about what we're saying, because that's from the place from which we're speaking is really is where we're connecting and moving, and the words are just, you know, in some ways a fraction of the experience that we can express within the language of English, you know. Yeah, so if is there any do you have any like last parting words for us, Lorena?
Oh man, to trust yourself in whatever that may be. I find that, so those are two words that people are always throwing around, but to ultimately to say, because I say this thinking about, right, the sort of peers and friends and other loved ones around me, and I have found that a lot of people, it's like they're taking a sip from the nectar, but they don't trust it, right? And then they go back to, I think, thinking or like overthinking, or maybe did I do this, or should I have done that? And in those moments, I pray for those people. I desire for those people, right, to go deep into really at one point for something that will almost without a choice have to really delve into that nectar that is themselves, and not doubt it, right, not doubt those right, those, I don't know, maybe pinches or whatever you may feel in your body, maybe, right, those anxious thoughts that awake us at night, um or I don't know, other sensations, but to maybe look at them first with curiosity, and maybe it's journaling, maybe it's breathing through, but maybe, right, and it doesn't have to be this, maybe even giving yourself 5 minutes, sometimes just timing yourself for 5 minutes. Let me play with this, let me think, let me just feel, what is this? And maybe, right, without thinking, say, maybe giving yourself permission, I'm not going to think about this, maybe on a piece of paper, what are the words that come to mind, and just writing them down, right? So almost like a play, like a mystery kind of with yourself of, what's coming out of me, of not judging it, of not being afraid of it, but let me just see, maybe I can play with myself in that way and see where it takes you, and then take things with a lot of grace, be kind to yourself, take one thing at a time. There is no rush, truly there is no rush, everything is as it needs to be, and will be, but give yourself the grace, the compassion, the love to yourself in that way, right? Whatever that may mean in that moment, and you will know, right? I think those small exercises that feel resonant to you, because I think that is, I think part of beginning with that, or again, I feel that is an act of love towards yourself, and again, the most important relationship with you. So those are my parting words. Thank you, Anayza.
What a gift, Lorena. Thank you so much for pouring your journey and love and wisdom and remembrance into this space, into this like Awaken as Love podcast. I really appreciate you. I'm really grateful to know you in so many facets, in so many ways. And for us to grow together, it really feels like a treasure, a living treasure. So thank you so much for being in my life. And yeah, I really appreciate you. Thank you all who have listened this far. Appreciate you too for being here with us in this intimate and sacred space. And if Into Soul Wisdom interests you, the information will be below. If anything that Lorena and I have interests you, please send a message and I'll share those contacts with you about anything we've mentioned. And parting, I want to say something that came up as you've been speaking. I've sat in 2 Gwenka Vipassana courses, and something Gwenka says is if you're thirsty and looking for water, you
you cannot only drill many small holes. You must at one point pick a spot and go all the way deep, like all the way to the core, because there may not be water there, but that's the only way to know, is to go all the way through. And so whether it is with like a course, or it might be a particular teacher you're following, or a practice you're doing, if it feels resonant some days and some days you have doubt with it, just continue going deeper, continue, as Lorena said, sipping the nectar, continue, as Gwenka said, to digging the hole, because once you hit the core, there may not be water there, but that's the way to know. And I feel like it's in the experiencing of continuing that you know yourself. And I feel within that knowing of yourself, that is the water, that is the quenching of the thirst, and that is the fulfillment of drinking that sweet nectar of you, of really exploring you. So whatever the path is, and know it's your life, like you are the path, like you are the spiritual path, and it might be varied and full of different things, but there is something consistent that remains. And to lean into that consistency, and to let it unravel and unfurl and trust it, like as Lorna was saying, trust yourself. Thank you so much for listening. So much love to you all. And until next time.